One of my favorite things about design and illustration is just world character building. And whenever I go somewhere and I try to support local art establishments wherever I can, my favorites are when I go to artist driven co ops where you have artists that are actually sitting at their table. These are the people that actually did the work. This isn't like passed on through someone else. They are representing their work there. They're proud of it. And maybe 5, 6 years ago, came across this artist, Jose Lopez, here in Los Angeles, and he had two books. It was this one, 4 a.m., and another one, which was really, really cool, called Mariachi Samurai, which was really great. And I ended up actually gifting it to, who did I gift that to? Oh, I gifted it to who's someone now, a friend, Andrew Pagani, his son, at the very first reading room that we ever did at Atelier Repairs, actually. Fun times. But I wanted to review this book today, just kind of flip through. So it's not a specific character driven graphic novel situation. It's more like he published a sketchbook of his own art and works. And so character designs, ideas, both known and original. It was just a really interesting way of, kind of walking yourself through your own process, but also seeing what else you would do in somebody else's sphere. Um, See a lot of character designs. This one actually ended up inspiring a whole coat that I designed once. But also stuff like this is just really intense, but also abstract, allowing you to kind of pull or get pulled into these various worlds. I get really excited about stuff like this, so I'm always trying to like not overshare. Here's a couple things specifically to the Mariachi Samurai concept, which I really hope he's done more with. But yeah, the artwork for it was really awesome. You could just imagine, like, oh, the protagonists and the supporting characters, some of the antagonists. Gosh, I'd really love to see this made into something. But yeah, if you come across good art and you can buy it from the artist, please do, because it's really cool. And, not only do you know exactly where it goes to, but you get to see the look on their face. And sometimes that look is thank you for supporting me and doing what I do. And we get something beautiful to have on the back end of it. So this is Jose Lopez, 4 a.m. My disdain for dust jackets continues. Ha 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 ha. This this is a book on the cinematography and design of The Man Who Fell to Earth, starring David Bowie. This was one of my favorite pickups from a Taschen sale. What I love about it is it kind of chronologically goes through both the film story and the story of making the film. And for those that are not familiar with it, I really invite you to engage with both Bowie's version as well as the more recent version. I think it was made on Showtime with Chiwetel Ejiofor and Naomi Harris, which was really good. Um, Gosh, just being able to have stills captured from cinema as photography is still one of my favorite things. But like also the fact that it's on this like silver gelatin paper, which if you know the film, you understand. Also, just the idea of how wildly diverse and expansive and curious that David Bowie was, and then documenting that curiosity and leaving it with us to kind of explore on our own is really just it's a special thing, man. Also, shout out to all of the people that go location scouting, all of the props departments. Like, somebody had to see this and like, yep, that's exactly what the director needs, right? And this is really the amount of work that it takes to create a film. You're building a whole world in a small company, just, kind of on not a whim, but around a whim, a whimsical idea. There's something really profound to invite people into your dream. It requires trust, but also requires communication on your part. And you find out how much you really do or don't know your own story by how well you're able to find proper collaborators to bring it to life. And by proper, meaning just who can help you bring your vision to life accurate to what the vision is. Not is it good, is it bad, is it going to be critically received or whatever. It's more about, is this what I was imagining? Is this what I was picturing? Is this what it was supposed to feel like? If we did that, then it succeeded. As with most of these flip throughs, I'm skipping many things because I genuinely encourage you to find this book, have your own experience with it. But it's definitely a story that has proved timely. Also, looks, just looks, man. And also a lot of just, 70s, 60s, and 70s wildness and surrealism. Also love these anecdotes in the back, kind of talking about how the filming was going along, maybe some things that happened on set. Like, it's a nice way to intersect these images with notes, but also, again, this reflectiveness of the paper really bringing you into the world that they built for this film. The man who fell to earth still resonates with so many people, and there's a lot of reasons why. Maybe explore it for yourself. See what you find. If you spent any amount of time around me, you've probably heard me wax poetic about some watch that I enjoy or the watch that I have myself, or, talking about the ways that watches are designed and created and kept. But a lot of times we forget that there was a point in time when what's commonplace to us was brand new. And this particular book, which was gifted to me by my friend Cynthia Glansberg, thank you, Cynthia, for birthday, it really goes into retro watches that are a little quirky, a little fun, a little different, but also they represented a departure in the design of that time, whether it was just for fun, for conceptualization, to stretch into the future, or really just because they could. Time as such an existential, landmark within our own living and our obsession with keeping track of that time, could be potentially to our detriment. But it also represents something really intentional about how do we track it. We've done this with sundials. We've done it with watches. We do it with calendars. We do it with clocks and wall hangings. But we also mark time in music. Someone once said that if art is how you decorate the walls of your home, music is how you decorate the time in your mind. Something to that. And I thought that was a really beautiful way of thinking about it, which is also great when you find a watch that, or a timepiece that has a chime to it, but also just looking at how keeping track of time falls in step or out of step with the times of the particular era that it was created. The design language is like, what does this tell us that was going on during that time with these shapes or this approach of the sandblasted aluminum? What can we derive from this? Also, where can we push it forward from a design standpoint? Like, why does a watch have to be centered? Why can't it be kind of like a heads-up display? Why can't we have fun? Why not make it out of plastics? And why can't we make it out of bronze versus gold? Why does it have to be precious? The whole story of mechanical versus quartz. There's so many reasons for keeping track of time, but also using time as an ingredient, using time as a means for communication. Because time itself is a location. It's where we are in the day, or where we are on a map, or where we are in our rotation around the sun, or even in the Earth's rotation around its axis. So being able to go back and look at the ways that we track time and the way we design those things, it's a bit more of an existential take on it because that's where my brain is today. But this book can be wherever you choose to have it. And I hope that you reference it in a way that allows you to keep your own time and find new ways to design the time tracking for the future. One of the coolest benefits of living in a place like Los Angeles is that things that normally only hit 2 or 3 cities in a particular country, LA tends to be one of the stops. And this book from Louis Vuitton covered 200 trunks being reimagined in different ways by artists for the 200th anniversary of Gaston Louis Vuitton's birthday, which is a mouthful. And from a fashion brand showing how fashionably you can interpret something in an artistic way, whether it is useful or just beautiful. And so this cataloged all of them, all of which were eventually auctioned off for charity. But the cool thing is they listed all of them from 1 to 196. And then there are 4 that are not featured in here. And I can't remember exactly why. But I'm sure there was a reason for it, which is funny because you open up something and you're like, oh, here's the reasons why they did this thing. It's like, nope, it's not listed. But what is listed are the people that did this, an idea or an explanation of the idea of why that they did this particular interpretation of the trunk. And then they're numbered, not so much in order of importance, but just, I think it was in order that they sent out the commissions. But seeing all of these trunks in the same room together in context with each other was very interesting. They took over, I believe it was the former Brooks Brothers store on North Rodeo Drive, and just walking through was really, really just inspiring of like, how many different ways can you imagine something? Shout out to Soren Silker. The photography he does on Starling Murmurations is really fantastic. Shout out to Foreign City too. It's always fun when fashion leans into the arts and when art can find its way to imprint itself upon something that is fashionable or from the fashion community. This, hilariously, was not a small trunk. This was a very large trunk, and it was in the middle of a red velvet listening room. And on here was a selection of 100 records, A and B size. So 200 records, right, in this crate that operated like a jukebox, and they had someone on hand that could play the music. So we were playing records from Prince to Howlin' Wolf to Madonna to Jay Dilla. And it was so cool hearing those records inside of this luxury space out of this trunk just because somebody had the audacity to do it. That was really cool. This was actually a portrait. This wasn't even an actual trunk. So again, some of the trunks were used in the medium of each of the artists. And per usual, skipping pages because I invite you to look into it. This was actually a short film, multi-channel. There were projections on the trunk or from within the trunk, like it was LED screens, and then this was projected in the background, so the trunk was in the forefront and the screening was in the background. Really fantastic. It was it's definitely you would have had to be there. I'm sure if you look up Louis 200 Los Angeles, you'll find a lot of videos of the installation from the inside of it. It was really fantastic. This one was cool because this one was made from carbon fiber, I believe, which was meant to, as it says, creating a Louis Vuitton trunk out of composite material, in part made in the Arrival Micro Factory. And at Arrival, we make high-performance fabrics and composites, which are super tough, recyclable, and colorable. And using a trunk and recreating it out of these composite materials just as an act itself, it's really impressive. This one was actually inside of a very large glass. This isn't small. This is a full-size trunk inside of an even larger glass. I believe that the neck of the bottle ended up coming off or was separated. I don't believe it was separated intentionally or by that hammer, and I feel for whoever separated it. But yeah, that was a thing to see. This was very interesting. I actually remember taking images of this. Was the idea of using basically the trunk as a basis to communicate sitting with opposing views, which is really nice. And so it's interesting to see, again, how many ways you can subvert it. This room was scary as all hell because it was an entire room of balloons with a trunk made of balloons, and it smelled like rubber, and it felt like it was going to come through the wall at any moment. It was not fun for me. This was really cool. I'll let you guys look up Shane Oliver and Anonymous Club, but whoo, this one really fascinating. This disc almost kind of reminded me of the disc that they sent out with the Voyager 1 satellite, but also it looked like a saw disc. So much story behind here. This was a a plate glass thing that kind of opened up. It's really, really interesting, the ideas that people had for interpreting the trunk. Shout out to Pat McGrath. Shout out to Alex Israel. I love the title of this, The Agoraphobic Traveler. Literally, a person that's afraid to leave outside. How would you travel? By not touching anything. It's amazing. And this is absolutely that BTS. This image was fantastic. It was behind a trunk that was in front of it. That was the trunk that was featured in the image. So there was a lot of like meta narratives within that, which is really cool. This was a really great one. It was a trunk that was basically made of a manifesto for, I believe it was Better Education, which was fantastic. Excuse me, for human-centered education. And this was the top layer, and then everything else were these sheets, which was amazing. Shout out to Robin Wright. Let's see here. This one was great. This one, it was like a wooden Rubik's cube. This one was great to see as well. But I recommend looking online for any of the video footage from this particular exhibition. It's really fantastic to see, and just grateful that I got a chance to witness it in person. And if you go to any exhibition, please pick up the book if you can. Photography as a medium means a lot to me. There's a great storytelling involved in it. But it's always really important when people are making photography to catalog their work and present it in a way that allows people to really appreciate what it takes to do it. This was done by a friend of mine, Jack McKain, several years ago. It's Clin and a collection of portraits, volume 1. I remember him doing the installation in Los Angeles. The thing about Jack is he captures these really intimate moments, but his medium is film, purely. And the things I've learned just walking around, shooting with him, but also just shooting the shit, like, great guy. But that's the reason people open up to him. And the way that he presented this piece, which, wow, forgot about that. That is a menu from one of our installations that we've done. And this was the sleeve, and had him sign it because sign your work. But the spacing and the room to breathe that he gave each of the photographs is like giving each subject their own private space to just exist and be and breathe. There's an intentional patience and care given to giving each of these images their own space and time. I'm sure you'll see people that you recognize. But when you spend this much time with someone and they're capturing you through a lens of understanding, you can't help but become friends or kind of keep that partnership or friendship going because you feel seen, you feel understood, you feel heard, you feel considered. And I think those are also great characteristics of any great image maker, whether you're shooting on the street, in the studio, or making a studio on the street. Like, there is much to be said about taking the time to make a great image and think about what you want to tell, what you want to capture, what story are you conveying and transmitting to the future? What story are you being honored with being the steward of? And how does this image conjure up a particular moment in time for you to come back to and experience and absorb? So, again, all of those of you with cameras, do not feel that what you're doing is anything less than time travel for future memories. Because that's essentially all a photograph is. It's capturing the soul, which is why some indigenous persons did not like it. They felt it was stealing their souls. And there's probably some level of truth to that. But it could also become a bit of a horcrux where photography is stashing bits and pieces of yourself through images across time just to be recombined when you need it the most. Thanks, Jack.